tonight, 10 days of terrorist attacks against Israel.
Willingness of the Hamas to throw rockets into our cities, this is something intolerable.
The latest on the violence between Israel and Hamas. Plus,
they tried to beat down the doors of the house while members were still inside.
The push to investigate January's deadly Capitol Hill riot. And we'll take you to what's called the Corridor of Death, where scores of people die while trying to cross the border into the United States. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Deadline for de-escalation. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Tara Mergener. The end of the day, that was the timeline set by President Biden in a phone call with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. But that doesn't seem to be stopping Israeli action.
That's right. Netanyahu saying he's determined to continue anti-terror operations in Gaza. 10 days ago, Hamas militants began firing rockets into Israel. Today, the terror continued with rockets fired from Lebanon raining down in northern cities. As leaders around the world call for a ceasefire, Israel is standing by its right to defend itself.
I see, first of all, the willingness of the Hamas to throw rockets into our cities. This is something intolerable, and this is something that we cannot accept. I think neither us and neither any democracy in the world.
Since the violence began, thousands of rockets have been fired into Israel, forcing Israelis to repeatedly take cover in bomb shelters and causing the IDF to fire back in defense with the support of some here in Washington.
Republican lawmakers say they're growing concerned with the dwindling Democratic support of America's closest Middle East ally. CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson brings us more.
Lawmakers here have historically been unified in their support for Israel. Now, Republicans say they're concerned with the growth of anti-Israel rhetoric from their Democratic colleagues.
Israel's a democracy. Hamas is a terrorist group.
But not all lawmakers agree.
Well, I think the Squad used to be a fringe element of the Democratic Party when it comes to Israel. Probably still are. But more and more Democrats like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and Chris Murphy are openly siding with this moral equivalency argument, that there's problems on both sides.
Senator Lindsey Graham tells CBN News he's shocked by the number of Democrats reluctant to firmly stand with Israel.
When the Iranians and Hamas here, Democratic members of Congress and the Senate, basically seeing no difference between Israel and Hamas, it only incentivizes more violence.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell adds when it comes to Israel and Hamas, they play by very different rules.
When Israel strikes, for example, they call the building and say, please get out of the building because we're about to attack it in order to minimize civilian casualties. Hamas is lobbing rockets into Israel to kill civilians. There is no moral equivalency here.
Both senators support Israel defending itself.
If I were Israel, I would do whatever necessary to diminish Hamas's ability to do this a second time. So President Biden has been cautious about pushing a ceasefire too aggressively. The biggest winner of a ceasefire right now would be Hamas.
Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who has Palestinian relatives in the West Bank, confronted President Biden Tuesday in Michigan over his support for Israel, reportedly sharing a message similar to her recent House speech.
As long as the message from Washington is that our military support for Israel is unconditional, Netanyahu's extremism, right-wing government will continue to expand settlements, continue to demolish homes, and continue to make the prospects for peace impossible.
The White House announced Wednesday President Biden spoke to Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu.
The president conveyed to the Prime Minister that he expected a significant de-escalation today on the path to a ceasefire.
Graham described Biden's Israel response as uneven and also criticized his plans to rejoin the Iran nuclear deal.
Why would you go back into a nuclear deal with the largest state sponsor of terrorism?
Pointing to Iran's role in the current attacks on Israel.
Without Iran's support for Hamas, there would be no 3,500 rockets.
As the situation continues in Israel, Senate Republicans agreed that until Hamas stops targeting Israeli civilians, there should be no ceasefire. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
President Biden's commission to study potentially adding justices to the Supreme Court held its first meeting today. The 36-member commission will consider a number of changes to the High Court, including expanding the court beyond 9 justices and applying term limits as opposed to the current lifetime appointments. The commission has 6 months to study possible changes before issuing a report. Some conservatives have blasted the commission as a way for Democratic lawmakers to pack the court.
Well, joining us now is Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council. Tony, always good to see you. You know, the stated purpose is to analyze arguments for and against reforming the Supreme Court. At least that's what the White House says. Tony, how do you see the motivation behind the commission?
Well, John, I think this commission undermines the legitimacy of the court. There's not a problem on the court. The only problem is that the left for years has relied upon the judiciary to do its bidding. And under the Trump administration, that was very intentional, working with the then Senate Republican majority leader, Mitch McConnell. They put constitutionalists onto the court, and we saw a huge reversal of the court being staffed with judicial activists to now having a court of primarily judges who simply interpret the Constitution.
Tony, some Democrats have claimed this. What do you make of the argument that whatever party is in power looks at the potential of packing the court?
Well, I think what's happened is the left has actually done that from a standpoint of they have politicized the court and have looked to the court to do their bidding. Look, the judiciary is supposed to be the weakest of all the 3 branches of government, but it has been elevated in the last 50 years because more and more of these policies that could not pass legislatively were tossed to the court, and the court, packed with liberals, activists, again, did the bidding of the left. So what President Trump did, and he did this not only in the courts, he did this in a number of ways. Unlike most Republicans who came in on the heels of Democrats, he didn't just push the pause button and stop the liberal tendencies of his predecessor. He hit the rewind button and went back and undid what they did. And that's why the left is so incensed, because he's the first one that has dismantled their infrastructure, and the court being a perfect example. He's taken the court back to what it used to be when you had judges that simply interpreted the law.
Tony, the court's 6-3 conservative majority announced yesterday that it will hear a Mississippi abortion case next term. If the commission recommends packing the courts, does that give Democrats the leverage they're looking for to blunt any potential blow to Roe? And if you can, in just a few seconds.
I think that's exactly what they're trying to do, is they're trying to avoid the inevitable. Once you have judges on the court that will adhere to the Constitution, Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey goes away.
All right. Tony Perkins with the Family Research Council, thank you so much.
Good to be with you.
Investigating the insurrection. When we come back, we explain why lawmakers are split on a January 6th commission into the Capitol riot.
Before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire. Monday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Thursday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Lawmakers want more answers about January 6th. The House today approving the creation of a commission to investigate the Capitol breach many call an insurrection.
That's right. Democrats say it's a breakthrough deal with bipartisan support. And while it may have started that way, Republican leadership now rejects the idea. CBN national security correspondent Caitlin Burke has the details.
Going back to Pearl Harbor and 9/11, there's a historic precedent for a bipartisan congressional investigation into a violent attack on the United States. For some lawmakers, though, this example isn't as clear-cut as others.
In the aftermath of the January 6th violent insurrection and attack on the citadel of our democracy, it seems reasonable that America should have a bipartisan commission.
If formed, the commission would investigate facts, circumstances, and influencing factors of the Capitol attack. Initial bipartisan support has now eroded, with Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy saying earlier this week he wouldn't support it unless Democrats agreed to broaden the scope.
What about all the riots that have led up throughout the summer, the unrest from BLM, Antifa, and others?
Today, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell announced his opposition, citing other investigations already underway and criticizing what he calls the partisan way Democrats have handled this proposal.
From initially offering a laughably partisan starting point to continuing to insist on various other features under the hood that are designed to centralize control over the commission's process and its conclusions in Democratic hands.
Democrats claim Republicans want to avoid the truth about what happened on January 6th.
Once again, they are caving to Donald Trump and proving that the Republican Party is still drunk off the big lie.
Expected to pass the House, its path forward remains uncertain in the Senate, where Democrats need 10 Republicans in order to pass the legislation. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
All right. Thank you, Caitlin. For more, let's bring in David Brody, CBN News chief political analyst. David, McConnell said as recently as yesterday that he was open to the commission. Can you explain the reversal today? And does that also put the future of the commission in jeopardy?
It does. As a matter of fact, look, it's going to pass the House, obviously, but regarding the Senate, it won't go anywhere. They're going to need 60 votes in the Senate. And the fact that McConnell's come out and said no, that's going to lead a lot of other Republicans to coalesce around McConnell and basically say, this is a done deal. We're not going to go for it. So I don't think this commission is going to actually see the light of day. The reversal, well, look, it's a hodgepodge of different things. But the bottom line is Republicans want to see a broader based commission that is going to say, look, if you're going to look at the insurrection, as it's being called, and the trespassing onto Capitol grounds, then what about looking at the trespassing that happened in Portland and Seattle and the riots there, left to right? You know, like, let's look at everything here. But, you know, that's obviously not something Democrats are interested in, which once again gets back down to politics.
David, today's House vote is the product of months of back and forth and bipartisan agreement between the committee's top Republican and Democrat. Does Republican opposition amount to a test of loyalty to President Trump?
Well, I mean, to a degree, I guess. I mean, that's an easy way. I'm not saying you're saying this, Tara, but that's an easy way for kind of the media to frame it. It's a loyalty test to Trump. Look, here's the truth of the matter, okay? Everybody talks about this being a bipartisan committee, and here's the top-line headline is that there's going to be the same amount of Republicans, same amount of Democrats. But let me give you the dirty little inside secret on Capitol Hill. The staffing that's going to be taking part in this commission, if it ever comes to fruition, and it doesn't look like it will, the staffing is going to be heavily on the Democrat side. So staffing's important. Staffing means direction, resources, what it's going to look like, the contours of it. And so people on the Hill that are in the know understand exactly what this means. It might sound bipartisan because you've got factions on both sides that are equal, but the layer underneath is not bipartisan whatever. That's a very important point to understand.
To that point regarding staffing, is this really about fairness and process, or is this more about trying to move past, as some critics would say, issues that potentially leaves Republicans vulnerable, given that the pro-Trump rioters were looking for Nancy Pelosi and threatening to hang Mike Pence?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's a good question. I mean, I think it's both. I mean, I think there is a degree of truth to the fact that they want some fairness here in the process, as we've laid out with staffing and some of the other issues as it relates to a broader scope. But the other part of it is, of course, Republicans don't want to sit around for 6 months to a year rehashing January 6th. That's not good for their brand. It's not good to keep it in the headlines. So for sure, it's both, John, for sure.
All right. Well, David Brody, we appreciate your insights as always.
You bet, guys.
Armed smugglers caught in the act along what's known as the Corridor of Death. We'll take you right where that's happening when Faith Nation returns.
Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Wednesday at 3 on the CBN News Channel.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
Well, welcome back. The Biden administration calls the surge in border crossings a seasonal uptick brought on by migrants who put off the journey because of the pandemic. Today, Republican Congressman Michael McCaul disputed that assertion. After a trip to the southern border last month, McCaul said it's a crisis that could have been prevented, writing in a Fox News op-ed, quote, Biden's plan to send an additional $4 billion in aid is not the solution, adding that sustained progress in the region means a commitment to addressing corruption and promoting the rule of law. Well, the Corridor of Death, it's a stretch of highway in Brooks County, Texas, known for smuggling drugs and vulnerable people.
I recently traveled to the area to see firsthand the crisis as it unfolds, partly due to the smugglers who have little regard for human life. A warning, some of the video in this story is disturbing. Armed with an assault rifle and 100 rounds of ammo, this smuggler races to make the handoff. Suddenly, several men jump from the back, making a break for the next car, hoping to outrun the law. CBN News obtained this shocking video, recorded by the smugglers themselves. And this isn't some scene playing out in a third world country. It's on the back roads of a small South Texas town.
Someone's going to get hurt. There's a great sense of unease now that they know that they are carrying weapons, and it has been documented now. Intel hasn't wanted to share it, but it's gotten so brazen now that they want the public to know.
This is Brooks County, some 70 miles north of the Mexico border. And it's clear evidence that ground zero of the immigration crisis is much larger than the border itself.
U.S. Highway 281, it heads north, is the main corridor for human smuggling or drug smuggling.
It's known as the Corridor of Death. And we see why within minutes of our arrival in Falfurrias.
We are going to the very south end of the county, on 281.
Deputy Don White responding after another body turns up deep in South Texas brush country. One of dozens found in the past few months.
We can see the prints.
The footprints pointing in the direction of remains, decomposing under the hot Texas sun, not far from the beaten path. His body moved by animals from its original resting place, belongings scattered about the shrubs. Deputy White says it looks like he died a month ago, likely left behind by his group.
F-13, time of death, 3 o'clock even.
Either he was dropped and they went on, or he became incoherent from environmental stresses and he started wandering.
An hour south, hundreds of thousands of women and children continue to surrender to agents after being dropped off at the river's edge by so-called coyotes hired to smuggle them into the U.S. For those trying to avoid agents, however,
due to past criminal history or past border interceptions, that sort of thing,
the second hurdle may be even harder. Getting around the Border Patrol checkpoint in Brooks County along a major human smuggling route. On the journey, move from stash house to stash house in the Rio Grande Valley until the cartel gives the all clear.
They're loaded up into pickups, vans, whatever, and brought to the south side of the county and dumped down into the brush. And then they're expected to walk up to 3 days through the brush.
The miles-long trek to meet the next smuggler waiting to usher them deeper into the U.S. is punishing. This is sandy loam, similar to what's on a beach. It's very heavy to walk on, and migrants on it hour after hour become exhausted. Scorching summers, freezing winter nights, and brutal winds, all taking their toll. Bodies and skeletal remains often revealing signs of painful, even violent deaths.
You know, the cartel has also been known to kill people that didn't pay up.
With the human flood crashing the southern border this year, drug cartels are raking in billions from migrants desperate to reach the U.S. Some with bad intent.
So many people are coming across, that gives the cartel even more opportunities to transfer people like MS-13, the 18th Street, pedophiles. Pedophiles love to come back to America.
Law enforcement scrambles to stay vigilant along highways. Resources in these parts are spread thin. Many border agents once patrolling this county gone, assisting with a massive influx on the border, leaving the cartel to take full advantage.
It'll be a while before someone can go out there and respond to the notice that someone is going through the brush. That brush is wide open. 944 square miles of nothing but private ranch land.
In the last few months, it's really picked up, and there are profound property damage with smugglers that are being pursued by law enforcement. And it's not only that, it's armed smugglers going through private property, rural roads, at high speeds to drop off their load.
Loads that law enforcement officers say defy dangerous odds in the wilderness and are fanning out in greater numbers across America.
Excellent reporting, Tara, and really a reminder of how far-reaching the issue of immigration is, whether you're a property owner or business or one of those faith-based organizations helping migrants. This is really far-reaching.
That's right, John. Yeah, the whole area, growing area for concern as those numbers at the border do continue to surge.
Well, again, excellent reporting. Coming up, a special graduation for some of America's best and brightest. More Faith Nation after this.
Are you suffering from feeling tired or worn out during the day? Can you not turn off your brain at night? You are not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor, and I've partnered with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and we're going to bring you some unbelievable information that you can use tonight to get a better night's rest.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Protect Your Sleep today.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living Tuesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
And finally tonight, it was a day of celebration for some 240 cadets at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. It was graduation day for the class of 2021.
President Biden was on hand to address the graduates, congratulating them for their hard-earned degrees in the middle of a pandemic.
But the Coasties fashion that you all have, you met the threat head on. You adapted, showed your resilience, and you led. It certainly looked and felt different, I'm sure. But you found ways. You found ways to keep many of the Academy's traditions alive.
Today marked the Coast Guard Academy's 140th commencement. Congratulations to the cadets and thank you for your service. Tara, it's pretty interesting. They got the president to speak at their commencement. What about you? Did you have any
How
big
cool
names?
is that?
Well, thank you for watching Faith Nation.
We'll see you tomorrow.